of the spear, cutting through the wrong. The swamp is thick, but the fire is strong. We blaze a trail where the brave belong. With the armor of God strapped tight, marching forward into the fight.
All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in to a special report here at Mountaintop Media. We have Nathan Charlan with us today. I don't know him, or I'm going to get to know him in this interview, but PolitiBible is his handle on Instagram, and he does some of the other social medias also. We'll get more into that at the end of the interview. But anyways, Leslie said we had a lot in common and we should just have a conversation. So I like to talk to anybody, whether it sounds like we're on the same page with most things, but I enjoy having conversations with people who disagree with most of my ideologies as well. But anyways, welcome, Nathan.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate the time and you having me on.
So you're out in Colorado?
Yes, yeah, out in Colorado, west of Denver. Been here now for probably like 26 years.
Yeah, it's beautiful out there. I've been out there probably 5 or 6 times.
Gosh, we love it. I mean, you can't beat the weather. The weather is amazing. Of course, like California, we're dealing with the heavy leftist policies that are kind of bringing the state to the ground. Unfortunately, our economy and business economy isn't doing too well. But like California, it is a great place to live with the beauty and the weather.
Yeah, I love where I live. I love my county. The state is corrupt, and we were talking a little bit before we start airing, but yeah, it seems like that's the problem with a lot of states is you have different ideologies. It's mostly the cities that have such high dense populations that outcompete how the majority of the states think, and it's kind of a problem when it comes to being in a place that you love and is beautiful and you like everything about it, but sometimes you feel like the state policies don't represent everybody for the most part.
Yeah, it's those heavy urban areas where everyone is so separated from, I think, just life in general. How food arrives in the grocery store, how a wide variety of different people have actually different opinions. That doesn't mean that they're evil, that they're racist or xenophobe, or fill in whatever name calling word you want to put at people just for having a different opinion. But yeah, the blinders are on so much for the people who just are heavily concentrated in the city, and they have no idea what it takes for their systems and the food, the water, all that stuff with your country folks who are making it and delivering it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to be a farmer. That's actually what I do is I sell to commercial ag and stuff like that. But I'm like a small organic type farmer. I don't use any synthetic mineral. I don't use any poisons. I'm a compost and castings and organic amendments and water and good soil. And I try to grow as much food as I can. I'm about 50%, I'd say, of what I grow, but for myself, I eat pretty much like wild game or fish out that I catch and stuff like that. And then I try to grow as many vegetables and eat fruit off of my own trees and stuff like that. But I do it on a small scale, but I do know a lot of people that spend their whole life. I've met people that have never left their town or their county. They're literally a slave to their own property, but they do love what they do. But we're talking about people that get up at 4 a.m. and they work until 10 p.m. and 7 days a week. And that's what it takes if you're doing the work yourself.
Amen. I mean, I have so much admiration and respect for those people. I'm not one of them. I share the same values and principles and probably opinions, but a lot of respect for those that do all of that hard work. We'd love to, our family would love to move to like a homestead kind of thing to grow our own food and all that. Our family situation just kind of keeps us, right around the suburbs. We have a son who's 19. He's got cerebral palsy and he uses a wheelchair to get around. So Living out in the country and kind of the rural area, it might be a little bit more difficult, for us. So that's on pause right now, that whole dream and plan.
Yeah, well, I think the people that pull the strings, the puppet masters, have made it very difficult with, a fake money system, and they do a pretty good job of keeping us in this rat race. It's hard to live off the land, because you got property tax. There is no state that doesn't have a property tax. There is some states that if you're over a certain age, you don't pay property tax, but I mean, for the majority of people, it's kind of hard to escape, like how to make it by selling chicken eggs and, or just, like you'd have to figure out a way to make money. You can't just live off the land because your property will be taken if you don't pay your property taxes. So how do you opt out of the system and do it all the way? It's very difficult.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head with that one. That's my biggest issue, I think, is property tax, and how that just is the pinnacle of truth for the lie that is the American dream, that you can own your own property. Well, you never really own it. You might pay it off from the bank, but then now you're paying rent to the government. And so, that kind of generational wealth never gets handed down because of the property taxes and the death taxes and all of that.
Yeah, I met these people when I used to live on the Big Island in the wintertime, and I met these people at the hot pond there, and I was talking to them, and they had to give up their multi-generational property because they reevaluated the system. And I don't remember what the property tax, but it was way more than 1% here in what we pay in California. And they just reevaluated it. I think it was a $500,000 a year in property. And it was a big, huge place. I mean, probably way more than they needed, but it was from their great grandparents passed down, and they had to sell it because they couldn't even keep it, because they couldn't even afford the property. Just the property, it was paid off. They could not afford the property tax.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's how they keep us regular folks away from actual true property ownership and passing legacies down to our family.
Yeah, you want to get a ranch out here in California, I mean, you're not going to find anything where you could have some cattle and do everything that you need for less than $1 million. So say at $1.2 million, even if you didn't have insurance and you had everything paid off, you're still paying $1,000 a month just in property tax. So, figure out what you got to do. I mean, if you're just trying to sell eggs and produce and stuff like that, and I mean, now you got to drive to, unless you're taking a horse and buggy to the farmer's market, or you have a stand in front of your house, but it's still, it's hard to do. Yeah.
It is absolutely. And that's, I think that also is now ramping up with the increase of insurance, homeowners insurance costs, the doubling of taxes, especially after the whole 2020 COVID, housing prices skyrocketing. Our taxes doubled. Our mortgage itself, just the monthly payment, went up well over $1,000 a month just because of higher insurance, higher taxes.
Yep.
And I think this is, to me, kind of conspiracy minded, that this all plays into the part of what they've told us out in the open, Agenda 2030.
Yeah.
In a few years, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And the whole model is to rent everything. And I've done videos on this as well, that how certain types of ownership that we used to have of a lot of different things have now all moved to subscription, so that they just keep you on the hook to be a slave to pay out every single month.
Yeah, it's by design. They don't want free thinkers that are independent, that are self-sustained. And it's going that way with automobiles. And you could get into the whole, like here, we pay a pretty hefty fee just to register our vehicles. I don't know how it is out in Colorado, but you own your car, but if you don't pay your registration, your vehicle gets taken from you, even if you have it completely paid off. And you got to have insurance, at least limited liability out here. That's not as big of a deal as the registration to me. I kind of understand that one a little bit, even though I don't like it, because there is people that, run the red light, crash your vehicle, and then just say, oops, sorry. So I at least understand that one. But eventually we're going to see vehicles that has software and different technologies that the vehicle runs on, that you might own the vehicle, but you're going to have to pay a subscription to continue to have the vehicle actually work. So you could own the vehicle, but if you don't pay for the technology that makes it run, then your car is going to be no good. So I think it's going to kind of slide in through the technological side to make it to where you don't even own your car in the future.
Absolutely, and you don't even own the autonomy to go from A to B because they'll have the power to shut you down. You know, with the whole kill switch that the Republicans even voted for.
Yeah, I mean, a uniparty. I guess I would consider myself a patriotic individual, but I kind of feel like both sides on not the people that I know personally that are Republicans, but when you get up into that political spectrum, I feel like they're all in on it, like almost all of them. And then look what happened to Thomas Massey, for instance. I mean, if you're somebody, look what happened to Ron Paul. Ron Paul, in my opinion, was probably the best presidential candidate that we've had in, since my lifetime anyways. As long as I've been alive, I was a huge Ron Paul supporter, but you even have people like Fox News, where he talks in front of everybody at a debate, makes a point, and the crowd goes wild and cheers for what he said, and then Fox News dubs in booing from the audience, and then they play that over and over just to manipulate people. But I mean, I think they get together and they're actors. They put on a show for the most part, act like they're opposing different things, but it's two paths to the same destination, totalitarianism. Why is it that a solution to the problem is always us giving up our liberties and higher taxes and more debt? And it always just seems the ship just sails the same direction regardless of what politician identifies as.
No, absolutely. I mean, I grew up, and I still am, a very patriotic American. I love my country. There's nowhere else I would want to move to or live. I love America. I love what it stands for. I love the principles, the values, the founding documents, the statements from the founding fathers. Love that stuff. But what we have now is exactly what you described. I've done a video too breaking down how voting just doesn't matter. And this is only like probably a recent last few years revelation for me. I was a big Trump supporter, thought he had done great probably for the first 3 years of his first term. It all fell apart when he fell for the whole COVID scam thing. But then I was willing to give another chance, for a second term here. And what a backstab betrayal that whole thing has been. I mean, the entire platform was one on hope that things would change, that things would go for the right. But it was absolutely the final nail in the coffin for me that nothing works. It's no matter who's in office, blue, red, we all march towards the same totalitarian end. And I did a breakdown video on this as well, just breaking down the administrations from the turn of the century to now, and how every single one, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and then Trump again, are all pushing these policies that steadily erode our constitutional rights and bring us closer and closer to authoritarianism or totalitarianism, because that's really the end goal. There's not anything that has ever happened in those administrations to give us more freedom. It's those rules that once government takes a certain position or takes control over something, they'll never relinquish it back. And there's no complying your way out of totalitarianism. And so it's like, what do we do now? And I think that's the biggest question that a lot of people are asking themselves. What is the solution? Because participating in the democratic process and voting for a candidate who says something and you believe what they say isn't turning out to be the answer that it was supposed to be in the first place. So what are we left with to do? But I think that might start just locally, and starting local in your own city, in your own county, and getting involved at that level.
Yeah, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I mean, I feel like it's more like 10 steps forward and 1 step back. They take you, push you to the brink of a revolution, and then give you a little something back. And I had a lot of people. So I was a huge Trump supporter. I actually drove to the Capitol. I was there for January 6th and all that. And I threw my Trump out the window actually after that, because I felt like he was in on it. And it was, kind of a setup to create this just more division. And, so that was kind of my final straw. I was there and I'm like, you know what, this thing was a setup. And I know that's a big conversation. I don't want to get too far into that, but yeah, I mean, he's pushing, if you look at the way he votes and the policies he passes, it's the same thing. We're in this technological era where, this AI and the 5G towers going to 6G and all this kind of stuff, So I had a bunch of people are telling me, oh, the good guy's already won. He's, they're already all assassinated. And, this Operation Trust type stuff is what I call it, because I'm just like, they're kicking back going, hey, get your popcorn. It's all good. It's all taken care of. Well, the same people have been telling me for a lot of years that it's going down this weekend. It's, just be patient. It's going to happen. It's already happening. It's already happened. And then I go outside and I'm going, why am I getting sprayed with planes they're spraying poison constantly all the time. I have months of videos. I actually track which jets spray them. A lot of people think it's just military planes. It's SkyWest, it's Alaska Airlines, it's all the major. There's some days not one in the air, and then other days 500 of them spraying metals and polymers, and who knows. There's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of different things where that's a whole nother podcast we could do on that. But I'm like, if the good guys are in control, why are they still spraying us like bugs? Why are all these foreign policies the same? Why are we still sacrificing our civil liberties? Like the football is still moving to their end zone of totalitarianism. So I just, I got told, hey, they're going to get rid of income taxes. It's already done. We got the new guy. And then you look at, what do you get? They're like, okay, the waitress tips or something. That's what you get. I'm like, really? I was like, I need more than I want the waitresses to be able to keep their tips or get taxed less on it. But like, you have people telling you that they're going to abolish income tax because it's illegal. And I just haven't seen any of this stuff come to fruition.
Yeah. I remember a lot of that talk online as well. Kind of, sit back, watch what happens. It's all being taken care of. There's white hats behind the scenes. And, part of me was like, is this real? Is this not? And then as time passed on, just like you said, it became pretty evident that was probably just being said as a psyop in order to keep actual true patriots from getting involved, speaking up, doing anything to change what is actually happening, and just to be like, sit back, hey, people who you don't know, have this under control behind the scenes. Just trust the process. And as time went on, the process revealed that nothing is actually happening. And now, foreign policy is taking the first place. And we're getting the scraps. Like you said, the no tax on tips, that's the crumbs for the peasants. Our infrastructure deteriorates. Our cities look like absolute garbage, especially when you compare them to international cities. We're supposed to be the shining beacon in this world. And I often facetiously or jokingly say that we're the richest third world country in the world because our cities are crap. Our infrastructure is crap. There hasn't been a true focus on the American people for a very long time.
Yeah, and you mentioned Agenda 2030. Before that, it was Agenda 21, which, have you ever seen the map that was put before? Have you ever seen the Agenda 21 map that was pulled from the United Nations that's all color-coded? You gotta look at that, because I've showed a lot of people that thought that I was a conspiracy theorist and stuff. And I'm like, no. I was like, here, just let me show you this map. You have to look it up, though. Anybody can look up United Nations. Oh, you drink water out of a jar too? Cheers, brother.
Last ball, yeah.
That's funny. We do got a lot in common. I don't drink out of plastic. There's enough estrogen mimickers and other stuff, and who knows what we're breathing. But anyways,
And the water's making the frogs gay, right?
yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, the atrazine and all that. That's man, we could have a whole conversation on just the food. I mean, but it all ties in together. You know, the social engineering through the schools, the media, the movies, the Hollywood, and things that they put in the food. That you know, there was a study on all these kids, and I can't remember the exact. It was males, and they were really young, and there was over 100 of them, and they gave them nothing but soy for and they didn't do any meat or any other protein sources but soy, and they had like 5 to 7 times more estrogen mimickers than a teenage female on birth control. You know, so what happens with a kid that's, let's say he doesn't even breastfeed and he's fed, what do you call that stuff? The
Formula?
the formula, the baby formula, packed full. I mean, it's soy and got tons of estrogen. I mean, you're born, and then you have all these other sources of chemicals in the food, and you know, and then so you're chemically being attacked, and hormonally being attacked, and then you're watching all. I mean, every show. It doesn't matter if it's cartoons or see, I don't have a TV, but most people have a TV, and most kids are watching a lot of programming on that stuff. And I'm not necessarily against it. I think there's some good stuff on it, but for the content that most children are being raised on, you know, you put them on some SpongeBob or what, I don't know what people watch now, but I've watched a couple of these things and I'm going like, what the heck is going? It's all got a lot of gay stuff in it, and I'm not against gay people, but you know, and I'm for freedom of whatever you believe in, but don't manipulate the kids. And you look at the engineering, there's obviously an agenda behind that, you know.
Oh, there's absolutely an agenda behind it, because just like you said, all the systems are in place. It's like birds of a feather flock together. They all follow the same, you know, path. And then those systems influence the institutions, and the institutions then follow suit. So we saw that with the entire, and it's still going on to a certain extent, but the whole transgender thing. I mean, this is completely anti-biology. The facts are there. It is plain and simple. It's common sense. Yet you have doctors who are advising and saying that this should be done, and prescribing it, and actually doing these surgeries for underage children when their brain hasn't even fully developed. You know, it takes until you're 25 for your brain to be fully developed. Yet you're going to permanently alter surgically somebody's reproductive organs because of some confusion that they're feeling, and probably an imbalance of hormones due to the food and the chemicals and the spray in the sky and all of that, that's affecting all of us. I mean, across the Western world, they've done actual legitimate studies that show there is an incredible drop of testosterone across Western men.
Yeah, and sperm count is going way down. Yep. And, you know, and you see it like in people don't even have to be gay, but they're more, they're not masculine. You know, you go to shake their hand and it's like this little limp kind of handshake, you know, and they're just kind of like, you're like, what? You're not a man, you know, what? You're a soy boy, I guess, is the terminology a lot of people use, but this is, it's definitely by design, you know. And so we were getting into how do we beat this, you know. So I think that we have to break this left-right paradigm, this matrix that we're fighting over tampons in the male bathroom. We're fighting over whether the Muslims are bad or the Jews are bad. And, you know, realistically, there's these triggering subjects on the left and the right, where and I feel like if one side is on, and I agree with different sides on different subjects because I'm a critical thinker and I make my own decision on everything regardless of what anybody around me thinks. I decide for myself, and like I said, I like to have difficult conversations. But for the most part, if you bring up certain subjects, the majority of people get triggered, you know, if you bring up certain things. And I think the left and right have to get rid of that mentality of of hating somebody for thinking differently. You know what I mean? And we just need to get back to having, who cares? Let's have difficult conversations. They say, hey, oh, and don't talk about race, religion, politics, and all this stuff. You know what? Who cares? Let's talk about everything. And
absolutely. And that's what we've, I think, missed in our education, and even at home. It needs to start at home, is educating our children and ourselves a lot of the times on how to have a conversation, a respectable conversation with somebody that you don't agree with. Because you're going to be able to find commonality somewhere. There's something that you're going to agree on and have common interest on or common belief on. And there's outliers that are going to be the big, passionate, emotional subjects that rile people up and get them all pissed off or angry, or just, to the extreme point, that they want to kill you. Of course, I see a lot of that, on the left. But again, on the right, it happens as well. People on the right, they don't want to have anything to do with people on the left. And I'm the same way. I've always identified as more, right-leaning, conservative, Bible-believing, Christian, love my country. But there's certain things that it's like, okay, if you're on the right, they would say, okay, you would be against all social programs or anything like that. Well, no, I'm not, because I have a severely disabled son, and if I wasn't in the picture, how would, who would take care of him? And it's like Medicaid has been a great thing for my son. And yes, there is abuse in that whole system. There is fraud in that whole system, and that needs to be corrected. But I'm not going to say we need to get rid of it altogether. Just because that might be a stance on the hardcore right. Same thing with different positions on the left. I agree with certain things. I've been a proponent for the whole legalizing of cannabis. I've always thought it was completely dumb to outlaw a plant, something that grows in nature. It's like, how can you outlaw a pine tree? For example, it just doesn't make sense, because there's no process involved like there would be for meth or cocaine or something like that. It's like, it's a plant and we're going to outlaw it. Like what sense does that make? And so, yeah, I have found myself now with my political points and the videos that I make, I kind of am attracting an audience of both people on the right and people on the left.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people who have attacked me, and and then they meet me in person and I talk to them. I'm like, hey, you know what? I actually got a lot of respect for you because you stand up for what you believe in. And you can say whatever you want about me. I don't really care, because I don't care I care what my family thinks about me. I care about the people, I care what my mom thinks about me. My dad passed away, unfortunately. I cared what, but other than that, I don't really care what people think, because I know who I am. When I go to bed, I know who I am at night. I care what God thinks, and I try my best. I'm not perfect, but, and I've had a lot of really good conversations with some of these people that would identify as my enemies and stuff like that, because they're like, wow, maybe you're not such a bad guy, but they portrayed me as this horrible, right-wing extremist terrorist guy. I've had multiple times I've been, reported as this really bad guy to, I'm sure I've got multiple FBI reports and stuff like that out there, because there's certain people around here that try to paint anyone that think like me as a terrorist and stuff. But the reality is we have to break that left-right paradigm. I think that's how we win. We have to identify. It's not the 1%. This whole 1%. It's the 0.0000001% that run the politicians, that run all of these countries and the corrupt governments, and they do a great job of keeping us divided. And I mean, they put billions of dollars into mass psyop. I mean, they've legalized, whether it's the CIA or Mossad or whatever it is. I mean, the government, the people that run the governments of the world, they pour massive amounts of money into the media and the social engineering and the movies and the TV and the cartoons and all that stuff. It's all kind of tied in together. But we have to figure out how. I don't know how to do it. I'm really good at doing it on an individual basis. I don't have a huge platform, but I think that's really the key is uniting. I always tell people, unite so we can fight later. We have to unite, because like the things that we're arguing over is like very small in comparison to the elephant in the room.
Oh, absolutely. The things we argue over mean very little. I think in the long run, the little things. Again, it's finding that commonality of what do we agree with, and like you had said, I had the utmost respect for somebody who might think completely different than me. But if they are firm in their convictions and their principles and their beliefs, and they know what they believe and why they believe it, and they can communicate that and defend it, I have so much respect. It's the lack of respect I find is when people are just those NPC types where
they just regurgitate points. They regurgitate the same stuff, and you're like,
they can't tell you why. They can't tell you, the reasoning behind anything. And I'm sure, we've all seen hundreds of those, man on the street interview videos where this is exemplified, especially on college campuses or, in cities and whatnot, that people will strongly have this belief, but have the inability to defend it or say why they believe it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I talk to a lot of people, and I'm very impressed when I can have a long, intelligent conversation with people that have conviction in what they say. Because I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are NPCs and they just regurgitate the same talking points over and over and over again. And sometimes it's just like, I don't like him, he's an a-hole. And you're like, well, who cares? I mean, if you're talking about a politician, I could care less whether I like his personality. I would way rather have somebody I completely didn't like who was arrogant or whatever it is that I just couldn't stand to listen to. But if they voted in the way that I liked, that's really all I care about. I don't need to like somebody. I could like somebody and think they're the greatest person in the world. It doesn't mean that I would want them in a decision-making process, because you could be the greatest person in the world and, in my opinion, be a very horrible leader and make very poor decisions and have very bad judgment. So, but anyways, that's something I hear. A lot of people just don't like somebody and they can't really get past that.
And the fascinating thing I've seen recently is the way Trump has been able to move his base to hate somebody that was actually loved just prior to, this person not doing something Trump liked, right? So like Thomas Massey, and then MTG. We have these true American patriots who vote for the Constitution. Charlie Kirk even talked about how much he loved Thomas Massey. And Thomas Massey was the one who brought us the Epstein files and forced that issue.
Yeah.
And because of that, boom, Trump just went after him to destroy him. And he had a huge political machine coming from the Zionists to replace him. Because again, we have foreign entanglements with a particular country, Israel. Now.
Look at the AIPAC money.
It is insane the amount of influence they have. And I've had friends who argue with me about this fact and saying that giving money comparisons to other organizations or other countries or other corporations, saying they have way more money or power or influence than Israel does. However, I think what we've seen through the Epstein files and what I told him as well is that money's one thing. Having blackmail and compromising videos or images or things like that on people is a whole other ballgame.
Well, that's what Epstein's job was. Exactly. One of his things. He was involved in many different things, but obviously intelligence gathering and keeping people in their place. And I think a lot of these people that rise to these positions have probably done things to compromise themselves willingly. Probably like, hey, you want to get to here? Well, you're going to do these certain types of things. And you know what happened when, Pam Bondi says, oh, we've got it all and we're going to release, we got it on my desk. And then it's like, well, there's actually nothing there. And then we get some of it, but a lot of it's retract. You know what I mean? It's like, and then Trump is just like, let's just move on to other let's just move on to subjects that matter. You know what I mean? This is not a left-right conversation, the Epstein files, but they tried to make it to where, you know, it was like the leftists that are ridiculous trying to, you know, and Trump's a pedo and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, we just want, like, we got promised something and we want to know, you know, what's in there. And then they kind of took it away. And then some, you know, you had people like Massey and MTG, you know, pushing for this stuff. But you look at almost every single politician on the left and right take AIPAC money, and there it goes way beyond that. I actually looked, I can't remember the gentleman who ran against Thomas Massey, but I started looking, I think it was like 89 pages of finance contributions, and it was a lot of Zionist money. I mean, I went through about 20 pages of it, and I was like, holy smokes, I got to do a podcast just on exposing, like, why was it seem like all of his support coming from one specific group? And so regardless of what countries we're taking money from, which ones have the dirt on, which ones are the ones that are, which one's policy, you know, during the government shutdown, there was like the money didn't stop flowing to Israel. Why was it that our government shut down, but then says, well, it's essential to continue funding Israel? But like, you're like, but our government doesn't, like, what's going on here? I thought that was kind of crazy to where they could shut our government down, but continue to send money to Israel and Egypt, which Egypt, we fund Egypt to keep peace in the Middle East, basically for Israel. And that's pretty much a fact. You can look it up. It sounds crazy, but you can look that one up as well. You know, so I did a deep dive on all the prime ministers of Israel, and they, I think all of them except for two have either changed their name or their dad or grandfather had changed the name. And I thought that was kind of interesting, including Benjamin Netanyahu. They're not their names. So like, who are these people who they say they are, I think is the bigger question than, you know, Jews versus Muslims. Are Jews bad? There's some great, I mean, I think there's good and bad people of all different races, you know, and if we're talking, you know, you get into biblical stuff. So like Jewish people are supposed to be from the tribe of Judah. You know, and now they're changing it to where it could be other tribes of Israel and stuff. But traditionally that's, you know, they say they're a direct descendants of that. But then you have these people that move from other countries and become prime minister of Israel and change their name. And so I think a big question is like, are they who they say they are? I think that's a pretty big question to ask.
Absolutely it is. And it's one that I remember the Tucker Carlson interview with Mike Huckabee, he was asking that same thing. And there's issues with DNA tests in Israel as well. The studies I've seen have shown that the indigenous people of the Palestinian region have more DNA connection with the actual true ancient Hebrews than a lot of the folks, the secular, you know, Jews who claim the name, who come from Eastern Europe, typically. They have more connection with the Edomites or the Canaanites than they do actually ancient Hebrew bloodline. And so what I've kind of seen, and I've done a breakdown of this as well with what Israel means and kind of how the nation was divided before AD 70, and then how it just kind of ceased to be a nation after 70 AD. But I think right now what we're seeing is kind of biblical prophecy from Obadiah, I think, about how the Edomites are in control of Jerusalem, of Israel right now. Yeah.
And, you know, I've actually interviewed, I did an interview with some Orthodox Jews who, you know, they're totally anti-Zionists.
Yep.
And
I love those guys.
yeah, but there's a lot of different, you know, there's people that follow the Torah, and then you have Kabbalists and Talmudists, and you get into that stuff, and it's kind of interesting when you start doing your research on that kind of stuff.
Well, and all of this is becoming foreign policy that's entangled with particular biblical interpretation. And we can, argue different
So you
biblical
only use the
interpretations, but
Schofield Bible, right?
no, I am not a dispensationalist. I kind of have conflicting views on, the book of Revelation, how much actually took place in and around AD 70, how much is still to take place. What I've settled on is something within Revelation, something also within Matthew 24 has already taken place, because a lot of the language points to something happening soon, with Jesus talking at the time, in probably 33 AD, looking his disciples in the eyes, saying, this generation will not pass. So if he's looking his disciples in the eyes and answering these certain questions about the end of the age, like how do we insert 2,000 year gap into that, when again context would say the disciples are asking Jesus a specific question, Jesus is answering that specific question in the presence of his disciples, looking them in the eye. What kind of interpretation or message would they have received? That this was to happen, to Carl watching Fox News 2,000 years in the future, or that it was to happen soon. Now, again, I think there's a lot of things, biblically speaking, and in history, that don't necessarily repeat, but echo or reverberate in certain ways. And I think that we'll probably have certain end time events. I often question too right now with the explosion of these data centers, with the progression of AI, without questioning, what happens, what future ethics are, where we're headed with this, with artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence. We're essentially creating ourselves a digital god, and no one's sitting back to say, is this right? So I'm wondering, like, is this our current modern style Tower of Babel moment, where we are coming together in a digital technological way to create a god, or to try to become like gods with the fusion of the microchips in our brains and things like that. Is God going to intervene? Is that right around the corner? Because how far will he let this progress?
Yeah, I mean, you look at people like Yuval Noah Harari, and who he is, right? And you listen to these guys talk, and they're pretty arrogant and pretty upfront with some of this agendas. And transhumanism has been around for has been around for a long time. They were talking about downloading their consciousness onto a computer program and living through AI. This goes back, I mean, pre-2000. I was reading about this stuff in, maybe 98, 99, talking about transhuman stuff and transhumanism. And now we're this stuff is accelerating at a really fast. I mean, they're growing brains in labs that are controlling. They're able to play video games and stuff like that. It's pretty wild. I forget that game that they have that you go around shooting people, but I was watching. It was like the first. I don't know video games, but it was like one of the first games where you go around and shoot monsters and stuff. Probably like
Doom.
Doom, yeah. Oh, Doom. I was watching the computer lab grown brain go around and play Doom, and I was like, this is getting kind of weird.
It's getting really weird, and it makes you wonder, where are we headed with this? And the transhumanism thing, I remember it even going back to the 80s. It wasn't called that, but Stephen King wrote a book called Lawnmower Man. That became like
I've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, and that was in the 80s, and it was already talking about and it was an intellectually disabled individual who basically was able to be made a genius in the digital sphere and uploaded his consciousness to rule in the computers. I mean, it was revolutionary for the time, and it was definitely prophetic. And now here we are at the precipice of this happening, and I keep wondering, like, where does it go? It's going to be in this near future, within the next few years, where we're going to get artificial superintelligence. I've seen some, news articles say that they've already reached AGI, and we can assume and kind of know that anything that's already been released to the public, well, that's a generation or two behind what the big tech giants, the government, military has, behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think, and I'm just going to point out the elephant in the room. One of the biggest problems, and this is going to make a lot of people mad, probably that's listening to this, but I don't think Jesus talked about people being passive and not doing anything. I think praying is really powerful, but we've become so passive where we're going to be at with this digital ID and the social credit scores and the prison-like cities and the complete takeover of every aspect of ownership to any of our freedoms and liberties. I mean, we're at the point where we're going to be living in prison-like cities. We're in some very dark times, and we're just kind of kicking back going, hey, I just want to watch my Netflix and I'm going to go to church on Sunday. And these preachers are not exposing it. And I've listened to, there's some preachers, and I'm sure there is still some good ones out there, but I listened to some guys some really old audio recordings, and they were hardcore. I mean, they talked about rising up against corruption, and I think Jesus would be okay with that. But the triggering word I'm going to say is this Judeo-Christianity is I think one of the biggest. I mean, you look at like the Zion Ambassador program. I mean, they're training Christians. I don't know how we could be joined at the hip if we don't even being a Christian. You have to believe in Jesus, and so how are they intertwined and joined at the hip when they if you are a Jew in that sense, you don't believe in Jesus as the Messiah, you believe in Moses, and that's fine. But, I feel like religion has been taken over for the most part, these big mega churches. And there's a lot of really good people that are being told to be it's all in God's hands, do nothing about it. And they're worshiping Israel. And while they've taken over our government for the most part, and we just do nothing about it, nothing.
Yeah, I believe our churches today have been infiltrated. I believe they are leading us astray in a certain way. The marriage of the church with the government, unfortunately, with these 501c3s or the nonprofit designation, have made them beholden to not speak, politics, apparently, from the pulpit, where that is actually one of the catalysts for our own American Revolution. When you look at the times in the mid 1700s, leading up to 1776, the American pastor was speaking about liberty and freedom and speaking against the tyranny of Britain during that time. And that, to a large extent, is what fueled the American Revolution. And we do not have that now. And then going to what you were talking about with, with the digital ID and the control grid and the surveillance state, I absolutely think this is stuff we need to be speaking out against, because this is a beast system. Now, whether it's, the exact match of the beast system spoken about in Revelation, the mark is an actual tangible, physical thing, or if it's metaphorical, the point is, the beast system is something that is, you're participating in a worldly system that is completely anti-Christ. And, because of that, you can either, you make your own decision, right? Am I going to participate with the world in these systems, or am I going to extract myself and create my own other systems, or just separate myself fully from this beast system? And now we are looking at that in the eye as digital ID comes down. These data centers, which I believe are going to be the brain hubs for the surveillance state that they're creating, that they will have the ability to track and record and store and then organize and use AI prediction methods for all of our activities, what we're going to do. It's like Minority Report, except take away the humans with psychic ability. Yeah. It's AI that is going to be controlling all of this.
Yeah, predictive
really,
programming.
Yeah, we're moving into an amalgamation of pretty much every dystopian novel and movie we've had from the 20th and 21st century so far.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, the parallels between some of these movies or cartoons like The Simpsons and stuff like that. It's like, are they from the future or they're just part of the plan making process? You know what I mean? It's you're like, how the heck could they be so spot on with something from, decades earlier, or I mean, sometimes half a century, or, it's really interesting. Or, I mean, you could even go back and look at some stuff, from thousands of years ago that parallels what's happening now. I don't understand all that. I haven't figured it out. Not sure if I'll ever figure it out in this lifetime, but there's something to that for sure.
Absolutely. And I think, depending on where you stand, I call it the revelation of the method. I think that's the name for it, where those who supposedly are in control, pulling the puppet strings, that there's a karma type belief that they have that as long as they sneak in popular culture or whatever, what they're going to do, then no blowback on them, when it actually happens. And then I think the more direct, like less conspiratorial approach I take is take them at their word. This is what I tell so many people is like, listen to the richest, most powerful people, what they say, and don't dismiss it as crazy or foolish or whatever. Know that what they're saying, they're working towards. So when Bill Gates says, in the future, red meat's going to be a luxury. You're going to have to just get used to eating printed meat. Well, a lot of people just say, that's funny, that'll never happen. But then you're like, well, look at what Bill Gates is doing. He's buying up all the farmland. He's heavily involved in the vaccines. He's heavily involved in, the tick stuff now too, where an explosion of ticks now across the country are carrying the alpha-gal syndrome virus to make you allergic to red meat, deadly allergic to red meat. And so it's like, there's connections here. It doesn't have to be, this grand conspiracy. It's just listen to what they say. Naval Harari, a bunch of useless humans who are just going to be useless eaters, right? What are we going to do with them now that AI is going to take over?
Drugs and video games.
Exactly. Drugs and video games.
What are we going to do with all these useless people?
Yeah. Yeah. And people just dismiss this. And it's like, no. These are the people at the top, at the control centers, the World Economic Forum, who's heavily influencing the United Nations, who then heavily influences all the other countries. And they lay out their plan. And of course, it takes time, right? And they always play the long game. And we're always waiting for, that big slap across the face. But it's just that old cliche of boiling the frog in water. And our country now is way past the comfortable hot tub point. We are headed towards boiling, and again, it's like, what can we do to slow the process besides creating our own networks of people, creating our own barter systems, trade, things like that, because that's where it's going to go to. If you don't want to participate in this coming beast system, if you get shut down, to purchase red meat because you met your allowance for the month, well, then we're going to need to connect with each other, and that's where we need to find these commonalities between the right and the left, and stop having that paradigm, is having commonalities and networks so that we can work together outside of this coming system, because it's meant to entrap all of us. And again, it might be a pipe dream that we can work our way out of it, but it's creating these parallel economies or parallel systems, and right now, again, we have the technology at our fingertips to do that.
Where I'm at with it is I have no fear. I know there's something after this life, and whatever happens to me in this world is I've already let go of. It doesn't really matter. This is some kind of test, and I've just committed to giving it my all, regardless of the outcome. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I call it natural law, what you were talking about. As far as I tell people, don't listen to me, listen to what they're saying. Listen to, Bill Gates was in, I think it was MIT or a TED Talks lecture he was doing. And he's like, well, one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty close to zero. And he was talking about CO2 and, and he's talking about the population being almost zero, and everybody's just laughing and they just put it right in our face. But I do believe in natural law, or whatever other terminologies people use to explain that they have to put it out there. It's almost like we have to opt into this system. So for me, I always tell people, you vote every time you shop. Okay. And unfortunately, the same people own everything. Okay, we're talking BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. You combine them all three, they own. Yep. They're the majority shareholders of all the S&P 500. And I mean, you go into it and it's infiltrated local. I guarantee you there is such a grip, and you might look at the top of these really big, like Chase Banks and all these things. But I mean, their tentacles have spread out across the whole world. And, there is some countries that are definitely independent, but that's where you see some of these, you see Ward. I don't know if you I think his name was John Perkins, I believe. I'm going from I haven't talked. I believe his name was John Perkins, and the name of the book he wrote was Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And his job was to go and try to loan these countries money to get them to build up their countries and make them take them from third world to first world countries, but loan them enough money with interest attached to where they couldn't pay it back, and then that's how they would get control. If that didn't work, then they would try to do a coup d'etat, or and then if that didn't work, then they go to assassination and a replacement of regime change, and then if that didn't work, then that's when it actually escalated to war. But you look at the countries and the places that don't go along with this globalist agenda and bow down and kiss the ring, all these things end up happening. Like, look at Libya. I don't know how familiar you are with there, but I mean, he was.
I am.
Yeah. So, I mean, look what happened to Gaddafi, and he was, and.
It's the almighty petrodollar. You wanted to get off the petrodollar, and I offered an alternative to enrich his own nation. It's the same story repeated.
Also developing the largest aquifer in Africa he could have grown enough food to feed all of Africa. And from what I understand, he took really good care of his people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I've researched as well, that he was actually changing it around. And when you look at the history with Iran right now, everyone wants to start America's beef with Iran at 1979. But when you actually dive in, we're the ones who, through the CIA, orchestrated a coup on behalf of British Petroleum back in 1953, and installed a Shah. We replaced their democratically elected leader, and put in one that would then basically rape the country of their resources to send it back out to America and the UK. And they didn't like that, because they were going to keep their own oil and enrich their own nation, which they should. I mean, I don't care what nation it is. Every nation should feel like their people and their priorities come first, right? And instead, what happens so much is, the CIA meddles in all of these things, and they flip these countries, and we wonder why some people in the world hate us so much, or hate our government so much. And it's because we are undoing their own democratic processes.
Yeah, and they manipulate people on such a high level. I mean, with all these crisis actors and the media, they'll go into a country, and I don't know if you remember when they will topple a statue of, say, Saddam Hussein or something like that, and or let's say someone's highly popular, they'll take a video of before the event even starts, is even opened up, and go, nobody even showed up. Or it could be somebody highly unpopular, and then zoom in on a small crowd of people and make it look like there's a lot of people there. But they do this they have a lot of psyop going on across the countries. I got a friend of mine that's actually from Persia, and he's more of he's totally more of like an American Democrat, more leftist ideology. We don't really agree on a lot of stuff, but we're friends and we totally have good conversations and everything. But I was asking him how people actually felt out there, and his family absolutely doesn't like the regime, but it's very torn. You know, he told me that it's kind of like same thing here. Like you're gonna have a lot of people that really like Trump, a lot of people that don't like Trump, or vice versa, you know. So it seems like it's not like everybody there is ready to revolt and take the country back over. But we don't really know for sure what's going on in these countries if you're not there, and it's hard to trust what comes through the news. You know, I almost want to run away from what the official narrative is, especially when you see the same talking point from all of the media, left and right, all kind of come at you the same thing. I'm sure you've seen those videos where it shows all the different medias saying the exact same thing over and over and over and over again. And you're like, what the heck's going on? This is like they got their script and they're just repeating what their orders were.
Project Mockingbird, you know, these CIA programs, these government programs, when they actually declassify some information from decades ago and they say the program ended, you know, that's never true. The program never ends. It just evolves. It either goes from full government control into defense contractor control. That way they don't have to disclose so much because it's a private company, or it gets continued under, you know, kind of black budget projects. But those things always continue. And a lot of this, you know, what you were talking about too, it comes from the dichotomy, you know, mindset of it's either black or it's white. It's either red or it's blue. You either support Islam and hate Israel, or you love Israel and you hate Islam. It's like two things can be true at the same time.
It's like picking a football team.
Yeah, exactly. And then that once you pick that football team, once your team is in, they can do no wrong, and you can't criticize them. You know, you got to just cheer on your team no matter what. And it's like, wait a minute. You know, two things can be true at once. Like, okay, yes, Islam and Zionism can both be the enemies of American interests.
I know, right? You don't have to pick a side.
The American people, right? Both of those are true. Same thing with like criticizing, you know, capitalism. I love capitalism, but we have completely gotten rid of the guardrails for capitalism. And so what it has become today is the game Monopoly. And the game Monopoly was supposed to teach you kind of the bad side of capitalism. And that's what we're seeing today, because the guardrails that were supposed to be in place are being ignored. And now we're having, you know, a handful of multinational mega corporations that own the vast majority of everything and control everything. And that's just not how it should be. And of course, now if you criticize capitalism, oh, what are you, a socialist?
I know, right?
It's like, no. I can have intelligent thoughts and actually take something and examine it and say, look, the principles are great, but it's not being applied very well right now. It's actually so corrupt, so crony, that it is beyond, you know, being recognized as what the founding fathers, I think, had in mind with the capitalist system.
Well, the crony capitalism, and you can see what's happening is the middle class is being completely wiped out right now.
Yes.
You have people that can't afford anything. I mean, they're they're hanging from a shoestring, and then the people that have all the money, they don't really pay any taxes. Yeah, they might donate some money and be great philanthropists to donate money to push their agendas forward and look like great guys with the media. They donate all this money, but in reality, the mega corporations, the same people own everything. I don't care what umbrella underneath what umbrella a corporation is. Pretty much the same people own all of them, but they don't pay any taxes. They don't really pay anything. And then your average person gets squeezed. And then when you have people that are pushing, against the 1%ers, that's just wiping the middle class out. That's a psyop. Like it's the 0.00000, I don't know how many zeros to the one. And it's a very, very small fraction of the people that run everything, and they don't pay any taxes. While we get squeezed and we deal with the boot on our neck. And it's all designed. But this crony capitalist, this fake individualism that we have is, but like you said, if you speak out against that, then you're a socialist or a communist. And it's one of those things. They've pitted us against each other on every subject, every single thing. And we need to have more we got to break through that matrix of just doing the opposite of what your other football team it believes in, because somewhere, we were supposed to live in as close to anarchy here in the United States as I'm not an anarchist. Personally, because I don't want tribalism. And, I talked to some anarchists one day and they were like, yeah, we're anarchists. They believe in the complete abolition of all government. And I was like, guys, just letting you know, you wouldn't be here right now if that happened, because the strong would, there would be nobody to protect you. You'd be done. You're the weak links. I don't want to be mean to you. But we were supposed to live as close to anarchy as we could with the smallest amount of government to prevent tribalism and those types of, where gangs are going around with guns in the back of their vehicles. But I mean, I think most people agree on 90% of the same things. I think we all want mostly the same thing, and we just disagree on how we get there. But I think government is the number one problem. We've got to downsize our government massively. I think we could take a 90% cut. That might sound extreme, but I think we have way too much government. And I do believe in some socialism. Like, I think that having a fire department is pretty good, all collectively pitching in to have, if there's fires, that's a form of socialism. Having law enforcement, or they used to be called peace officers. I think in having a limited amount of peace officers is not a bad idea. But anyways, that's my 2 cents on it. All right. Well, I guess we've reached our limit of people's capacity. Nobody watches anything. I've done 2.5-hour interviews and they were the best ones ever, but nobody watches. They go, oh, I don't have time to watch that. So I guess we already went way past most people's capacity of what they'll watch. So Nathan Charlan, how do people find you, and where do people find your research? And why don't you just give us all that information?
Sure. So I'm mainly on Instagram. My handle is at PolitiBible. It's just politics and Bible combined, so PolitiBible. And on there, I do, my favorite things to do are whiteboard breakdowns of certain topics. And I do heavy research on it. I provide sources, and then I take pictures and convert all my whiteboards and research into PDF files that can be downloaded, the links on my bio. But yeah, that's where you'll find me. I also post on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and X. Awesome.
All right. Really appreciate you coming on and taking the time. And hopefully we'll get to have another conversation. We could probably talk for a lot of hours because we just barely scratched the surface. Maybe next time we'll dive into one specific issue, and really break down and get into the fine details of some stuff. But anyways, really nice to meet you. And if you're ever out in Northern California, definitely come by and say hi. And if I do go to Colorado every once in a while, I fly into Denver, so I'll definitely hit you up if I'm heading out that way.
Wonderful. Let me know. It's been a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Thanks, Nathan.